Monday of the 24th week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, in giving this instruction, I do not praise the fact that your meetings are doing more harm than good. First of all, I hear that when you meet as a church, there are divisions among you, and to a degree, I believe it. There have to be factions among you, in order that also those who are approved among you may become known. When you meet in one place, then, it is not to eat the Lord's Supper, for in eating, each one goes ahead with his own supper, and one goes hungry, while another gets drunk. Do you not have houses in which you can eat and drink? Or do you show contempt for the church of God, and make those who have nothing feel ashamed? What can I say to you? Shall I praise you? In this matter I do not praise you. For I received from the Lord what I also handed on to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night he was handed over, took bread, and, after he had given thanks, broke it and said, "This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way also the cup, after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it, in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the death of the Lord until he comes. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, when you come together to eat, wait for one another." The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "Proclaim the death of the Lord until he comes again." Sacrifice or oblation you wished not, but ears open to obedience you gave me. Burnt offerings or sin offerings you sought not. Then said I, "Behold, I come." Proclaim the death of the Lord until he comes again. In the written scroll it is prescribed for me. To do your will, O my God, is my delight, and your law is within my heart. Proclaim the death of the Lord until he comes again. I announced your justice in the vast assembly. I did not restrain my lips, as you, O Lord, know. Proclaim the death of the Lord until he comes again. May all who seek you exult and be glad in you, and may those who love your salvation say ever, "The Lord be glorified." Proclaim the death of the Lord until he comes again.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. When Jesus had finished all his words to the people, he entered Capernaum. A centurion there had a slave who was ill and about to die, and he was valuable to him. When he heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and save the life of his slave. They approached Jesus and strongly urged him to come, saying, "He deserves to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation, and he built a synagogue for us." And Jesus went with them. But when he was only a short distance from the house, the centurion sent friends to tell him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you enter under my roof. Therefore, I did not consider myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and let my servant be healed. For I too am a person subject to authority, with soldiers subject to me. And I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come here,' and he comes, and to my slave, 'Do this,' and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him, and turning said to the crowd following him, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." When the messengers returned to the house, they found the slave in good health. The Gospel of the Lord.
The first reading comes from 1 Corinthians 11, 17 to 26 and 33. In this passage, Paul is talking about the Lord's Supper, the gathering of the community to celebrate Eucharist. Well, in the early days of the church, it appears as if they celebrated the Lord's Supper as a full meal. People would bring food. It was sort of a potluck supper. The problem was some people brought a lot of food and ate until they were gluttons, but they never shared it with those who had little food, the poor. And so Paul is saying, you're sinning against the communion that you say you're celebrating. In this case, we're talking about communion at a horizontal level, that Eucharist is Jesus serving us and us being called to serve each other. They're sinning against that dimension of Eucharist, forming community. And then Paul records what happened at the Last Supper. Jesus took the bread and said, "This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." The word in Aramaic for body is probably guphi, which means this is me, this is my substance. He says, "This is the cup of the new covenant in my blood." Notice the formulation is the cup of the new covenant. It's not, as is found in Mark and Matthew, the cup of the blood of the covenant. In Mark and Matthew, what's in that cup? Blood. In Luke and 1 Corinthians, what's in the cup? Covenant. It seems to be a softening of the formula. In this case, both over the bread and over the wine, which is unusual, it's not in the synoptics, Jesus says, "Do this in remembrance of me." This is anamnesis, that when you do this, I will be present. You will remember me. But it's not simply a thought about me, but rather you make me present. This is what the Jews believed when they read the Passover ritual, what happened at that first Passover. They believed they were truly present, and it's that same idea. But "do this in remembrance of me" also has another meaning. It means when you do this, please remember me. That's what is meant by the Aramaic words being used. Why would Jesus need us to remember him? It means when you do this, please pray for me. Remember me to the Lord. And again, why would Jesus need that? Because when we come to the Eucharist, we're coming to the cross. And so, as Jesus hangs on that cross, he is asking us to be there for him. Jesus shows the incredible vulnerability of asking us to love him. As God, he needs nothing, and yet he asks for our love. The Gospel is from Luke 7, 1-10. A centurion, remember centurions were Roman officers who would lead 100 troops, and they were pagans, asked Jesus to heal a slave who's about to die, a servant of his. And Jesus says, well, I'll come along, especially since he's encouraged by the Jewish leaders, since the centurion was a God-fearer. He had paid for the construction of the synagogue. What does the centurion say? You don't have to bother. Just say the word and my slave will be healed. Now, this has two levels of meaning. At the first level, the centurion is very respectful, knowing that if Jesus enters his house, since he's still a pagan, it would make Jesus impure. So the centurion is thinking of the good of Jesus, but also he recognizes the authority of Jesus, that this is a supernatural authority. And that's something that Jesus marvels at. He says, I've not found such faith even in Israel. Remember, this is the Gospel of Luke. Luke is a gospel which reaches out to the Gentile Christians and the Gentiles, trying to bring the Gentiles to conversion. So some of the heroes of the story are certainly Gentiles. And this is one case where we see that the Israelites have in a sense rejected Jesus. Remember what happened in Nazareth when the people in Jesus' own hometown synagogue reject him. The Gentiles have accepted him. And may God bless us.